The movie begins with Nori, a young girl who always felt different from her peers. Unlike her classmates, Nori had yet to discover what made her special until something strange happened when she was 7. While watching her neighbors from her bedroom window, she saw a kitten in the garden. In that instant, hair began to grow on her face, and she transformed into a feline. When her father entered the room, wings sprouted from her back, revealing her unique ability. This was when Nori finally realized what set her apart. Now a teenager, Nori is excited to attend Sage Academy, a prestigious school for magic, with her best friend, Reina. Reina, who has the power to control fire, struggles with low self-confidence despite her impressive abilities. However, Nori is always there to remind her of her incredible potential and to encourage her. On the other hand, Nori struggles to control her powers. Whenever she transforms into an animal, she ends up merging into multiple creatures at once, making her abilities unpredictable. A few weeks later, Nori and Reina, along with other students, gather to wait for a bus to take them to Sage Academy. Instead, a mysterious man emerges from behind a tree and announces that he will guide the newcomers to their magical school. After saying goodbye to their parents, the students follow the man into the forest. As they walk along a hidden trail, the group soon comes across a glowing portal. Nori is the first to step through, followed by Reina and the rest of the students. They find themselves in a strange and magical world. Within the first few minutes, they discover that their cell phones no longer work at the academy. They meet Principal Linda, who welcomes the new students and explains that they will be divided into 5 categories based on their natural magical talents. Fuzzies, who communicate with animals, flickers, who attract objects to their hands, flares, who control fire, flyers, who float, and fluxers, who can transform into any creature from the animal kingdom. Before classes begin, all students must take a placement test to assess their skills in front of the professors. The first group to be tested are the flares. Their task is to light a candle placed 2 meters away. Philip is the first to be tested and successfully lights the candle, receiving his evaluation card. However, when it's Elliot's turn, he struggles, releasing a smoke screen instead of a flame. The professors, disheartened, deem him a lost cause. Reina is up next, and she impresses everyone by lighting the candle effortlessly with just her little finger, establishing herself as the most powerful among her peers. Next, the Fuzzies take their test, which involves asking a dog questions and passing if they get the answers right. After that, it's the Flickers' turn. They must lure a ceramic vase into their hands using their abilities. A student named Pepper faces a challenge when, instead of attracting the vase, she repels it and smashes it against the wall, leading to her immediate rejection for faulty magic. It's the Flyers' turn. The Flyers are assessed by performing a short flight where they must hover 1 meter above the ground for 30 seconds. One student takes off his backpack filled with heavy stones, not realizing that this will cause him to quickly float up to the ceiling. He gets stuck and disqualified, needing to be rescued by the professors. Finally, it's time for the Fluxers, those who can transform into animals. Their task is to transform into a spotted cat and maintain this form for 6 seconds before reverting to their human form. When it's Nori's turn, things go wrong. Instead of turning into a spotted cat, bat wings sprout from her back within seconds, startling all the professors. Nori realizes that she has lost control of her powers and quickly reverts to her human form. At the end of the exam, each student receives an envelope with their placement results. The students gather in the courtyard, anxious to see which group they've been allocated to. Reina is thrilled to discover she has been accepted into the Flares group. When Nori opens her envelope, she finds that she hasn't been placed in the Fluxers as expected. Instead, Nori is puzzled when she reads the acronym UDM. The principal directs all the students to head to the cafeteria to pick up their uniforms, except for Nori, who is instructed to follow a forest trail to her new destination. Nori follows the trail and arrives at the UDM headquarters, where she is greeted by Bud. She soon finds herself in an underground shelter. Nori meets other students who, like her, failed their magic placement tests. She quickly realizes that she has been placed in what is essentially the Misfits Club. The UDM students are not allowed to study magic and instead receive mundane lessons like those taught in regular schools. Nori demands to know why they can't practice magic like the other students at Sage Academy. At that moment, Principal Linda appears and explains that UDM stands for Upside Down Magic, a group reserved for students whose magical abilities are considered flawed or unpredictable. Linda further explains that UDM students are believed to never be able to control their powers properly, so the school's goal is to suppress their magic. They are expected to wait until their powers naturally fade away, allowing them to reintegrate into society as ordinary individuals. In 1939, a student named Reginald Roberts, who had upside-down magic, became the perfect host for a malevolent force called shadow magic. This chaotic energy thrives on disorder and nearly destroyed their world. The professors and students of Sage Academy had to join forces to defeat the shadow magic, narrowly preventing a catastrophe. Since then, the school has been extremely cautious with UDM students, fearing that uncontrolled magic could once again lead to disaster. Fortunately, shadow magic cannot function without a human host, and according to Principal Linda, UDM students are the only ones vulnerable to it. For this reason, UDM students are isolated from the rest of the academy and forbidden to practice magic until their abilities disappear. On the same day, the other students are sent to their respective classes, and Reina learns that the annual Founders Day celebration is approaching. During the event, 5 freshmen will perform, and the top 2 students from each category will be selected by their professors to compete. The winners will present their skills to the founders and all current academy members. In Reina's first class with the Flares, Professor Argon challenges her to turn corn into popcorn using her fire magic. Though nervous, Reina succeeds at first, but after hearing Philip mocking her performance, her insecurity takes over and she ends up burning the popcorn. She is scolded by the professor while Chandra, a second-year student, watches from outside with a sly smile. The next morning, Bud takes the UDM students outside for what he claims to be a special class. Excited, Nori hopes to finally use a broom for flying. However, her excitement quickly turns to disappointment when she realizes the brooms are ordinary and meant for cleaning the schoolyard, not for magic. As they work, Nori uses the opportunity to sneak into the classes of her fellow flyers and observe their lessons. She notices that Professor Han has now tasked students with transforming into a specific type of spotted cat, rather than any random creature like before. While snooping around, Nori overhears information about the upcoming Founders Day competition and becomes more determined than ever to prove herself worthy. At that moment, Nori sees an opportunity to prove herself to the academy leaders and decides to work on fixing her magic. Determined, she sneaks closer to the class to observe the kitten, memorizing its features to better replicate it later. However, when she attempts to transform in front of everyone, her powers betray her once again, and she morphs into a bizarre, hybrid creature instead. Professor Han, alarmed, quickly calls Bud, urging him to control his student before the principal finds out about the incident. Later, at lunchtime, Nori confides in her classmates that she has drawn every detail of the kitten and believes that with enough practice, she can finally control her transformation powers. Meanwhile, Reina sees her best friend Nori across the cafeteria and gets up to join her. However, she's scolded once again by Miss Argon and is forced to return to sit with her Flare class. Philip, who had successfully popped all his popcorn kernels with his fire magic, is named the best student in class, and Argon orders Reina to challenge him. Despite her best efforts, Reina's popcorn is slightly burnt, disappointing Argon once again. Her self-esteem continues to falter under her professor's harsh expectations. During a break, as Reina walks alone through the academy's corridors, she is approached by Chandra, the second-year student who had been watching her earlier. Chandra praises Reina's immense power and potential. Before leaving, Chandra cryptically offers to help Reina if she ever wants to push her abilities further. Determined to become the best in her class, Reina stays up late studying in the library. As she goes to put a book away, a mysterious black-covered book falls from the shelf. Curiously, she picks it up and discovers it's the Manual of Shadow Magic. Reina begins to read, but as she opens the book, the lights flicker, and she quickly realizes the danger of her actions. Startled, she tries to put it back on the shelf, but the book seems to have a life of its own, following her as she gathers her things to leave. Reina hurries back to her room. Meanwhile, Nori is at the Misfits boarding house with her friends, practicing tirelessly to control her magic. Despite her efforts, she struggles, unable to maintain a single form for more than 3 seconds before transforming into a chaotic mix of animals. The next day, as Reina looks out the window and sees Nori laughing with her new friends, a wave of sadness washes over her. She begins to fear that Nori no longer misses their friendship. Just as these thoughts overwhelm her, Reina notices the Shadow Magic Manual on her bed. The pages flip open on their own, revealing a chapter about manifesting untapped powers. As she reads, a dark cloud forms around her and suddenly invades her body, filling her with newfound energy and power. Later that day, all the freshmen gather to watch the competition between the top 2 students from each class. The Flares are first, and Philip confidently steps forward. Reina surprises everyone by popping all the corn kernels in record time, impressing Professor Argon. Tasting the perfectly popped popcorn, Argon feels pride for Reina and declares her the representative for the Flares at the upcoming Founders Day celebration. Just then, Nori arrives, visibly excited to show the progress she's made. She confidently tells everyone that she's been training and asks for another chance to prove herself. Transforming into a striped cat. Nori holds her form as Professor Han times her performance. But just as she nears the 4-second mark, bat-like wings sprout from her back, causing her to panic. She loses control and begins morphing into a series of bizarre creatures. Seeing her friend in distress, Reina rushes to help Nori calm down. But the moment Reina approaches, the dark magic within her stirs, and her presence only intensifies Nori's chaotic transformations. Reina struggles to control it. Reina quickly apologizes to her friend, while Bud steps in to help Nori up. Their moment of relief is cut short when the principal arrives, scolding Bud harshly and warning him that if he doesn't keep his students in line, he'll lose his job. As the group returns to the UDM headquarters, the students feel utterly defeated, believing they'll never master their powers or be accepted. Seeing their despair, Bud, who had experienced this same hopelessness in his past, feels compelled to reveal something important to his students. Gathering them in the forest, Bud opens up, admitting that he's always hated the way UDM students were treated, and that he's tired of watching their dreams be crushed. He then makes a bold decision to teach them how to embrace their unique abilities and unlock their full potential, despite the Academy's rigid policies. At that moment, Bud begins to sing, using the lyrics to communicate with the animals in the forest. The students are shocked but relieved to discover that Bud is actually a member of the UDM himself, specifically from the Fuzzies category. However, unlike others who can simply communicate with animals, Bud can only talk to them through music. Despite not being trained by the Sage Academy, Bud reveals that he's managed to keep his magic alive by practicing in secret all these years. Seeing their professor as a kindred spirit, the teens are filled with hope once again. Bud promises that from the next morning onward, he will teach them to do the same. While heading back to the lodge, Nori reflects on Reina's strange behavior during their earlier encounter and senses something is wrong with her magic. Curious, she decides to visit Reina and find out what's going on. When Nori arrives, she finds Reina with Chandra, who is holding the Shadow Magic Manual. It turns out Reina's powers have been intensified because of the book. Furious and scared after almost hurting her best friend, Reina demands Chandra leave and take the book with her. After Chandra leaves, the book mysteriously returns. When Nori knocks on the door, Reina quickly hugs her but, to keep the secret, sends her away. The next morning, Bud begins training his students. He helps Andre control his floating by tying a hose around him, allowing him to float up to the treetops without flying away. As the training continues, the group starts to embrace their unique abilities. They bond, and little by little, they learn to control their magic. Elliot shapes his smoke, and Pepper gains full control over throwing objects. Nori decides to stop trying to transform into a single animal and embraces her unique ability to merge different creatures. Meanwhile, Reina is approached again by Chandra, who annoys her. During their conversation, Reina realizes she is the only one who can see Chandra. Feeling disturbed, she rushes back to her room, where Chandra continues to taunt her. Chandra insists that Reina's powers are far stronger than those of her classmates, enticing her with the promise of unlocking her true potential. As Reina succumbs to the allure of shadow magic, Nori discovers her friend has been possessed. The evil spirit reveals that it plans to destroy the entire school and warns Nori to flee to avoid being its first victim. Nori quickly returns to camp to inform her professor about the impending danger. Her classmates want to confront the principal with the truth, but Bud advises against it, believing Linda will dismiss their claims. He urges them to wait until the following day, suspecting that the spirit intends to strike during the founder's ceremony. On the morning of the event, all the students and professors gather in the garden. Linda invites Reina to present on stage. Instead of a full performance, Reina merely demonstrates her powers and then stands up, announcing that she has something even more impressive prepared for the special day. Suddenly, a massive fireball erupts from Reina's hands, casting a shadow across the garden. A chilling voice announces its return after many years. The professors realize this is the same spirit that once possessed Reginald decades ago, and that shadow magic now threatens all students, not just the UDM. In a desperate attempt to stop the monster, Professor Argon and her students launch a giant fireball, but the demon remains unharmed. At the principal's request, the Fuzzies summon birds of prey for assistance, but the animals are too frightened to confront the monster and quickly flee. The Fuxers attempt to transform for an attack, but their animal forms prove ineffective. As hope dwindles, the UDM step in. Pepper drives the creature away while Elliot creates a smoke screen to blind it. Andre distracts the monster, giving Nori the chance to take it down. When the demon is grounded, Linda urges everyone to unite their powers for a final attack. However, Nori stops them, realizing the monster is her best friend. She risks her life to help Reina regain control. Just as Nori is about to be attacked, a fireball emerges from within the creature, destroying it. Relieved to see Reina freed from shadow magic, Nori hugs her. After the academy is saved by the UDM, significant changes occur. The UDM program is abolished, and they now study alongside other students, learning to control their unique powers. Bud is promoted to the official professor of the Fuzzies. No longer are cafeteria tables divided by category. Students are encouraged to build friendships across all groups. Thanks for watching.